Hello, welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. This episode is going to be chilled out, right? It's going to be a bit more of a conversation me and you are having, although you can't reply to me, but hopefully you can send me a message or share or tell me what you got from this episode. And we're just going to have a chat. I've got my cozies if you're watching this, because it is recorded on YouTube if you'd like to watch the podcast rather than listen. I'm in my sort of comfy clothes and I've got like a nice cardigan on and I'm just sort of chilling with you. But I wanted to have a really close conversation with you today about a topic that's important and something that can really change your life and change your business. And that for that in itself, I think it's extremely important and valuable. So we're talking about how to turn, 5-year goals into 1-year achievements. And I suppose ultimately people think, is that even possible? Full stop. Some people are like, that can't happen. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how we can do that, how it is possible, how I do it here at May James with clients, how we get real clear on big picture thinking. I'm going to talk you through some client examples of people who've done this and just really give you, I hope, a boost to be like, let's go for this next year. Let's make this happen because it's important, right? So, first up, the question of, is it actually possible? I want to just say yes. It's a big yes. It is so possible to turn, some of your 5-year goals, all of your 5-year goals. It depends on what your goals are, but it's so possible to turn 5-year goals into 1-year achievements. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's effortless. I'm not saying that it's like, you never have to do anything. But it is possible, and it is a lovely thing to do, should it be the time that you want to do that. So, my first question to you is, what are your 5-year goals? Have you actually got clear on those? Like, what are your 5-year goals? What do you envision that being? If you're sat today, whilst I'm recording this, and you're in 2023, that's going to be the end of 2028. What do you want to have achieved by then? And I think sometimes in order to do this really well, we have to learn to think bigger, which is quite difficult. It's quite challenging. Sometimes thinking bigger is not as easy as we say. Like, thinking bigger is an important thing to learn because it makes your journey easier. The more I can work with someone, if someone comes to me and they're able to think quite long term and they're able to see the future, I know that the journey they're going to go on is a lot easier, especially if they want to turn their 5-year goals into 1-year goals. Some people can't look beyond, 6 months. Some people can't look beyond 12 months. For some people, 5 years just seems so out of reach, and that's okay. Like, if that's you, that's okay. Don't panic. But if you are someone who can understand that idea of where will my life be in 5 years' time, that can really help make your business growth journey easier, especially if you're someone who is trying to grow their business and who is kind of changing or pivoting or moving into a new piece of their life and their business. I think ultimately, when you're having this conversation, what has to come up is the idea of, are you prepared to make it happen? Achieving 5-year goals in 1 year is not a walk in the park. However, it also isn't a death sentence. It isn't a real drag. So I think we need to get really clear on this, and I don't want you to get the wrong end of the stick here, okay? Like, depending on the goal will depend how it actually runs. But I have helped people, and some of the people I'm going to talk to you about who have done that, it hasn't been the worst year of their life. Like, for some of them, it's been the most easiest and sort of joyous and the most sort of abundant time. Obviously, if your 5-year goal is to create a $20 million business and you're currently at 0, then one, I'd say it's very unlikely that we're going to do that in a year. But 2, that will require a lot of graft and it will require a lot of pain, likely, because that's a hell of a goal. But most people I work with, that's not the goal. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking to feel a certain way. They're looking to achieve something. They're looking to have been, in a certain publication. They're looking to speak on stages. They're looking to do various things that is a 5-year goal to them. And there is a lot of things we can do to make it not. And that doesn't have to be a drain energetically, and it doesn't have to be really miserable and depressing. One thing I do want to say is that when other people in the industry who do what I do, sometimes will say to me, and I welcome this, like I love a discussion about this, might say, May, how are you actually getting the results that the clients are getting? And there's a whole plethora of reasons, right, for that. And I try to not take credit for it because, yes, it's me, and yes, it's me driving things and strategy, but ultimately it's them executing. And if no one executes, nothing happens. So it's very limited in terms of how much it is, reliant on me. But ultimately, intensive planning and intention is normally involved. So if somebody is going to have a big sort of progress, a big success, a big, outward success that people see as success, there has been intensive planning prior to that in order to make it work. That most people are just not prepared to understand, engage with, recognize, want to appreciate, or would never choose to do an intensive planning experience for them to understand how it's going to work. And when I talk about planning, many of you will know, if you listen and you're familiar with my work, we don't talk about planning as if it's a one and done thing. We don't talk about planning as in this thing that happens and then it's gone and then that's it. Planning in my world is about being flexible. It is about agility. It's about understanding where you're going. It's about understanding, what is the longer term vision and how is the actions that you're taking every day linking to that. But intensive planning and understanding what people are doing really is the core key. If someone comes to me and says, right, we've got this 5-year goal, how do we make it, how can we get it into 12 months or 18 months? Inevitably, it's going to be a plan. It has to be really clear, really thought out, really understood as to what they're trying to actually achieve. If you are on this journey and you're like, do you know what, I'm ready to do this next year, you need to decide that you're going to take action like you've never actioned before. Because ultimately that's how this works. So the reason that the clients who do choose to collapse time and do make this stuff happen, it comes down to them just getting their heads down and working. And again, I'm not saying that means you've got to work 50 hours a week. I'm not saying you've got to work 100 hours a week. Some, people won't have done that. Others might have done. But it's about you understanding, what does action look like to you? Because I'm not interested in action if you do 50 hours of action a week, but it's none of it strategic. I'd rather you do 5 hours a week that is really strategic. And that's something that people, again, need to fully understand. Otherwise, you are going to waste your time. Another piece of this puzzle that if you are going to look at how do you turn your big 5-year goals into a 1-year achievement, is you need to look at your leadership and understand how is that going to grow and how are you going to expand your leadership. Because ultimately, if I am trying to help somebody to do this, one of my biggest roadblocks in actually getting them to be able to achieve this is their leadership piece. Because even if they take all the action that we've laid out in a plan and we've decided that they're going to do, like even if they do it, but they don't fully internalize it, they haven't got there, their brain hasn't caught up, their leadership isn't sort of helping them to match where they're trying to go, we inevitably won't hit the goal. And I've seen it happen time and time again. And it's hard. It's really sad because, it's frustrating. And it's not that they're not capable of it. It will happen in a time that it's right for them. But if you are someone sat here wanting to try and really forward think and forward get to where you're going, understanding that you're going to make a commitment to lean into your leadership when it gets really bloody hard and you're like, I don't know if I can do this or not. That's where there's real growth and expansion. And I'm not saying you have to get to that point multiple times in the year in order to grow. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm just saying that at the points that it does get tricky, sticky, frustrating, you feel unmotivated, you feel like you don't really want to do things, it's the times in which you say, yes, but, yes, I am going to do this. Yes, but I don't care that I feel like that because we're going to do this anyway. That's where the growth, that's where the kind of 1%, 10%, 5% improvement comes in that actually allows for you to completely overhaul what you actually achieve in your business. And it helps you to then make sure that every single month you're really cycling forward at a fast pace. Now, to move on to that, like to keep that, but then also add something else into the mix, your ability of how much you can hold at any one time has to massively expand in order for you to create sort of 5-year goals in 1 year achievements. So your ability to hold space, ability to hold conflict, your ability to hold difficult scenarios, your ability to be able to stand up for yourself when you're being misunderstood, all of those things are key to making this happen. Because ultimately we're saying, right, step into this thing. You're going to have to do 5 years of growth in a year. Not necessarily, but for some people it is. I'm going to be honest. For some of you it won't be, for some of you it will be. For some people, they are literally changing decades and decades of behavior, of belief systems, of behavior patterns that is ingrained into them, that often many people of us haven't chosen. This is, stuff from our childhood that has just been given to us. And we are now sat there going, wow, okay, objectively, we're going to run a business, grow a business, change a business, scale a business. And at the same time, you've got to become a leader, work on your leadership, change these behaviors, somehow hold yourself in this whole process, and deal with a life in a world that is the hardest it's, been, in the sense of how much you've got to try and do at once and be there for everybody. And if you're, a woman or a mother, or many of us have various different family responsibilities on top of everything you're trying to deal with. Like, I am not sat here saying to you that I think that this is some easy thing to do. And I'm also not sat here saying that, everybody's got the same starting point, because they really bloody don't. And it's really unfair, because everybody's starting with various different privileges or discrimination or things that are stopping them and preventing them from barriers in order to be able to get to a set point. So don't let this conversation be swayed in the sense of, you need to make this about you and what your set of circumstances are. And that's the joy of working with me, in the sense of I can completely customize all this to you. We go through things and we will, really understand what your set of objectives are, but also understand what is your life, what is like going on for you, what have you got available to you, what resources do you have, and what don't you have, because that's really key. But when we come to being able to hold more at one time, the more we can hold, the more growth that we can have. So if you can learn to hold more, then inevitably your ability to achieve more kind of comes as a given. The other thing I need you to think about, if you're really wanting to turn your 5-year goals into 12-month achievements, which is so exciting, if that's you, I need you to be ready for challenges. And I want you to just go into 2024 assuming that they will happen. People often say to me, how does your business, how do you still maintain business growth year on year, even though, the people that know me behind the scenes, my life has, every single year seems to have some kind of issue, catastrophe, thing that is completely out of my control that I have to then sort of deal with and address. A lot of that comes down to, I now just go into my everyday knowing there's going to be challenges, there's going to be stuff that happens that's really hard, I'm not going to have the answer to most things, and I will just have to deal with them. And I will find a solution at the time I have to find a solution to. And that has changed my life. And I am forever indebted to it, actually. I'm so thankful for the challenge in some degrees, because it's made me be indestructible, in the sense of nothing really phases me, because I can just be like, okay, right, something bad might happen, so if it does, we'll deal with it then. Having that assumption that challenges are going to be present in your journey allows for you, when they come up, to actually level with them and find a solution, rather than being emotionally dysregulated and just bouncing around and being like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Again, this is part of your leadership, it's part of your emotional intelligence work, but it's so, so important, because if you are trying to collapse time and create, amazing success in 12 months, then inevitably there's going to be times where something doesn't really go to plan. The plan and the strategy you have written might completely be void. And we've had that this year. I've had clients this year where something has happened in their life, personal or business, or something in their industry, or something in their environment that is an external factor has happened, and we've had to completely rip out parts of what we had thought or planned for or kind of predicted because something else has happened. And that's really hard. That's hard for people. It's really frustrating. It's really saddening for people because they're like, oh man, like this is really annoying. But what we won't do is sit in it, and we won't sit in the shit, and I will not let people just churn over stuff because it's not helping them. I'm like, right, let's go. Next week, let's test it. If it doesn't work, we'll move on to the next thing. And that is a really important mindset to adopt if you want to, create amazing success like achieving 5-year goals in 12 months. The other thing, I need you to be prepared to wait for silence and to keep going. So often when people are like, I'm achieving these goals and we're trying to do like rapidly scaling businesses, or we're looking to try and really grow a business rapidly, what you have to understand is that often the compound effect's really real, but it doesn't kick in for a long time. So sometimes you are taking action for 6 months and you've seen absolutely no signs that it's going to work, and people are kicking and screaming and frustrated at me. You've got to be prepared to wait for something to kick in. You have to keep going through the silence. You have to stay focused on what that plan is. And if on the 8th month that pays off, or the 12th month, which I have had before, I've had where I've said, please give me a year, and they've done it the whole time, and it hasn't worked. They've just been like, it's not working, nothing is happening. And then that last 12 months, even halfway through that month, it's kicked in and it's snowballed, and it's massively changed things. And that in itself, right, is one of the hardest things in business you have to get your head around. It's one of the hardest things you've got to be like, I am gonna do this. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of them, it's the fact that I'm there would be the reason that they did have that success. Because otherwise, they would have packed it in at 3 months or 3 weeks in or 10 months in or whatever. And it's having that support system there saying, we're going to do this. Like, you are going to do this. And I'm here to support you, and I'm here to keep you going. I'm here to keep you there. And that's the joy of joining something, like my one-on-one advisory, like May's Accelerator, where you have access to me. And that is my job. That's what you're employing me to help you with. And yes, you've got to lead yourself, and you show up in those containers and you ask for help. I'm not here to handhold for you, but I will be there to keep you going when at the point in which you're like, I'm just throwing this away and we're doing something else. I'm like, please just let's keep going a little bit longer. So just be prepared to wait for the compound effects to kick in, for you to see a result, and understand that you're going to have to take action anyway. The other thing I'd like for you to remember is that you have to, this is a total non-negotiable, okay? If you are going to try and do 5 years of goals into 12 months, or something that in your head you're like, I can't achieve for another 5 years, but actually we're just going to be like, fuck it, let's do it next year. I need you to commit to celebrating every single win in your business. I don't care how small it is. I need you to commit to that. Because celebrating the small wins is so key for you being able to keep up momentum and to keep up your self-esteem, really, to allow you to take the level of action that you need to take. You need those small wins, because without them, it's a blooming hard journey sometimes. Sometimes it's like, what am I doing? Has anybody done anything? Has this really worked? Is this doing anything? You've got to be able to identify those tiny little pieces, those tiny little threads that are like, yeah, this is positive, this is exciting, this is really good. And that in itself is so important. So, so important. And people want to just like push this to the side and just think, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like, it really bloody matters. The final piece I want you to think about before I start talking about some of my clients and how they've managed to do this is I want you to embark on 2024 if you are like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to like, just take one 5-year goal. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, you don't have to take all of them. Take one 5-year goal and say, do you know what? I'm going to do that in 12 months. What I'd like you to do is think about, how can this be a 12-month process of me challenging my focus and my discipline? It's a focus and discipline challenge. Those two things are two things that we are massively lacking in the world today. And we are going to massively lack even more so as the world continues to grow and amazing things continue to be released, but also the world becomes really noisy. understanding your ability to focus and being able to be self-disciplined is two of the hardest skills to fully grasp. And I want to give you a challenge to say, spend 2024 challenging yourself on that, monitoring it, auditing it, making sure that you can actually do those two skills. Because it's really important, but also the exercise of achieving a 5-year goal in 12 months really allows for that to actually happen and for you to actually utilize it in practice rather than just trying to be mindful of, oh yeah, I need to focus more, or oh yeah, I need to try and be more disciplined. So, talking about clients, and the reason I'm doing this because we don't normally talk about clients really, but I thought you might be kind of interested as like who, like what are they doing and how can they, like what does this look like in practice? So I'm going to talk to you just a couple. So I've got one client, amazing client, who is an artist. She's an artist amongst other things. She does many different things. She's very multi-passionate, but she's an artist. One of their goals this year was to spend more time doing art. Art wasn't the thing that really brought her in a lot of her income, so it's more of a kind of like passion project thing that she loves doing, but it brings her the most joy. And I was like, okay, cool. And for some context, she has worked with me for a number of years, but in different sort of lighter touch containers. The start of this year did a strategy intensive with me. She then joined me as Accelerator and then is still in a year of clarity now. So 3 great offers, right? 3 great, amazing programs. I know that you can say I'm biased, but I think they're bloody amazing. I think they're really good. And she basically achieved a goal that was a 5-year goal that was around getting her art into exhibitions, for people to see it, right? For more people to vision it, for her to be part of a recognized, amazing, institution, in a gallery, in a physical real life thing. Like, that's a big deal. Yeah, any artists who are listening, you're going to be like, that's huge. Anyway, I set her challenge and was like, we're going to do this. Like, let's just focus more on this and let's like make this happen. To date, and I don't know for certain if this is like 100% up to date, but I know like this has happened. So it might actually be more than what I'm about to say. But to date, she's had 3 exhibitions. She has been accepted onto 3. She's had an in-person one. There was something involved in the metaverse. She's had something else as well, and I can't remember. I think the other one was an in-person one as well. Amazing, amazing events, like full-on events. They're, part of an amazing collection and just like a huge achievement. And I saw her recently and she gave me a hug and she was like, we did it. Like, I did it. And that's amazing. And her mind was like really blown because she was just like, I didn't believe it when at the start of the year, I said to her, like, let's make some of this happen. She had longer term goals written and I was just like, this needs to come forward. Like, let's just make this stuff happen. And that doesn't happen overnight. She's had to take a lot of action, but it hasn't been a slog in the sense of like, she hasn't had to beg to get these things. These opportunities presented themselves at the point in which, 1, she decided it was going to happen, 2, at the point in which she was like, yeah, actually, I do want this. Like, once she actually acknowledged that she wanted something. And then thirdly, when she did start, positioning herself, talking more about her art, showing up, that inevitably helped. But it wasn't like, it was quite a like flowy thing. It wasn't this like painful activity that she had to do. And actually, the art side of her sort of creative business really helped her to have some escapism from work because she was finding some of the other areas a bit more challenging and a bit more kind of energy draining. So this art stuff has been like an absolute gift to her this year and a real joy. And she even, remember, she sent me a voice note, I think it was a voice note, when she was going to drop off her artwork to go into one of her exhibitions. And it was just the energy in her voice was just so heartwarming and beautiful and so happy. And you could just tell she was just like, my God, I've done this. And I really want that for everybody listening. Like, if you're listening to this, I want that for you. Like, yes, you might not be an artist. Yes, your 5-year goal might be a revenue goal. It might be some kind of thought leadership goal. It might be something about your marketing. It might be about who, where your work is published. Like, it doesn't really matter what the goal is. I want you to feel the joy that she had in her voice. I want you to feel that satisfaction. And I want you to feel the kind of like, my goodness me, I've actually done that. And I can bet on myself. And I can make stuff happen that doesn't have to have time limits and restrictions to it. So that was one amazing client, and she's great and she's doing loads of fun things, and I can't really wait to see what happens next year because I feel like she's on a real trajectory for growth. And that's another beautiful thing, right? When you get involved with this, it becomes quite addictive in the sense of like, once you realize that time is a social construct and that you can collapse time, then you start looking at things differently and you start looking at things that you want in your life and really starting to understand what is it going to take to get there, which is nice. There is another client who, well, we've got multiple who are these who fit this description, to be honest, because this is what I really help people with, especially in Maze Accelerator. So if this sums you up, Maze Accelerator is normally a good shout for you. Often we have, so this client came to me and wanted to transition from something they were doing and shift their business to a different area and expertise. And a lot of the time what happens with this is that they go from something in industry where you're doing something, as in you're sort of trading your time one-on-one a lot of the time, you know, it's some kind of transactional thing, it's a done for you service, you're somehow giving somebody something, and then transition into using that knowledge to help teach others. And that's something I help people a lot with, this transition between I am a graphic designer, I am a photographer, I am, you know, a cleaner, like anything where you have a skill that you're doing and wanting to take that to being how do you help others, or how do you use what you know to then actually support somebody else. And that transition for some people will take years, but for the people that come and say that they want to do that with me, I'm like, great. And we have a kind of like clear process of like, do this, do this, do this, let's move here, let's change this, let's pivot here, to help them do that faster. So there was a client last year who did that really, really well and really gracefully and really smoothly. And within 6 months, she had completely pivoted that and was sort of like sold out and booked out in that other new genre, which is really exciting. And actually had made that transition within sort of like 3 months, but I would say 6 months in terms of feeling established and feeling like everything was kind of moving forward and being booked out and things like that. But we have a lot of examples in the business of people who do that transition, or they don't even transition. Maybe you want to add something into the mix. Like we've got somebody in Maze Accelerator at the moment who is amazing at what they do and is incredible professional in their industry and is adding another revenue stream. And we had a conversation about where I was like, have you thought about X, Y, and Z thing? And she was like, oh yeah, I have actually. Like I've thought about that. I'd love to do that, but I don't know like who am I to do that? Have I got authority to do it? We had a whole conversation, which many of you were going to resonate with, because if a lot of you are in this situation, so many of the same feelings and questions and worries come up, yeah? And we had a conversation about it, and I was like, you 100% can do it. Like there is zero reason why you couldn't and why you shouldn't. And that is moving forward now. So she has gotten kind of the brand together, she has gotten a website going, and this is almost like a new business for her. It's like an offshoot of what she's already got going. And when we talk about diversifying revenue streams and we talk about, you know, adding other things into the mix that build your profit, like that's a core piece of what this can be. And so she is now in the process of, she hasn't launched it yet, but she's in the process of just finalizing those things and her website and things like that. And she is then going to present. And she's actually got a keynote that's really going to, that she's presenting to her kind of industry conference at the end of the year, that I'm so excited about for her, that will really help kind of launch that new venture. But all of this comes from having these like in-depth, more challenging conversations where I'm sat and you're sat and we're going backwards and forwards and saying, well, why not now? Or why is this waiting? Or why does this have to take X, Y, and Z time? Why can't it be a now goal rather than a 10-year goal? Because sometimes people come to me and they've got a vision, right? They think like, in 10 years time, I'll stop doing this and I'll start doing that. And we dig into why that is. And it's not that every single long-term goal has to be made a short-term goal, because it doesn't. But often people's long-term goals is normally what they actually want to do, and what people are currently doing often like isn't. So we often have to kind of like merge them together, and we kind of figure out what is it that they actually want to do. I have another amazing client that we worked with a few years ago. Actually, this is an interesting one. Yeah, let's talk about this amazing client. So amazing client, businesswoman, great, fabulous, amazing woman. And she had a setup where it was kind of operating in the here and now was necessary just for the running of like day-to-day living. And I think everybody can resonate with that, right? Like everyone can resonate with, you've kind of got to keep going on your, I don't want to say hamster wheel, but like the wheel of life in order to maintain various things. And you've got family and you're kind of just keeping going. And often, when people hire me, they don't necessarily hire me for like the long-term impacts that I can help you with, like the longer term planning, the legacy stuff. We do, if I work with people for years and years and years, we'll often end up getting into like legacy planning, succession planning, exit planning, like what is the growth piece? What is the actual end point? And this was something we looked at with this amazing client. And yeah, it was really beautiful. And it stirred up a lot of difficult emotions for her and the other stakeholders in her business. It stirred up a lot of questions. And to be fair, sometimes the work we did was actually more kind of opening more loops than it was closing, which I argue is important when you're at certain points of business and certain revenue levels, which this person was generating a lot of revenue every month and every year, that you have to then start having these more challenging conversations. I'll cut a whole story out because we'll be here forever and you might not be interested in the middle part. But the end part that's really exciting is that recently she sold her business. And I've had clients, a number of clients who've sold their businesses. And it's a really exciting thing. And it's a really bizarre thing as well, because often it's very strange. And the thought of it's one thing and the reality of it is another. And the end point of after you've done that is a whole other setup. So there's various sort of parts to it than that. But when you do work with me, we will often sort of begin things and put sort of thoughts out there and things out to the universe, or maybe to you, in your head, in the back of your mind, that will sit there and that will churn. And that's fine. That's the point, right? Not everything we do together has to be action here and now and then, and that's it. A lot of, quite a few people actually that I work with will just sit on things for a long time and then be like, right, remember when you said this X amount of time ago? I want to look at that now. But they can sit in your mind, right? And they marinate and they work out. And then ultimately, opportunities come up, things arise, situations arise where it then makes sense. And it then makes sense for you to be like, no, I'm going to do that now. And that happened with the client, right? Like at the point in which a few years ago we'd had this discussion, it was like, I don't know, I'm not sure. Like, do you want to sell? Do you not want to sell? There was whole conversation around, well, ideally, yes, I'd love to, but I've not a clue how to do it, or I don't really know, like, is there any value in it, or like who would buy it? All those questions that come up, which is very common. Whenever I have an exit conversation with clients, those are the stuff that always comes up. But it's really nice to see how you can just collapse time so much, right? And it's not about you sat there thinking with a piece of paper, like, how can I make sure that I've achieved every single thing I possibly want to do in the next 12 months? That's not what I'm suggesting you do. I am suggesting, though, that you think about, what do you actually truly want? Why is it on a 5-year goal instead of a 12-month goal list? And how can we make sure that you actually get there? One of the ways we can ensure that you get there is through working together, and is through typically working with Maze Accelerator. Come and join Maze Accelerator and join a group of women who are also going after really clear things and are moving forward at pace. Yes, you can come and work with me one-on-one. Yes, you can come and work with me in other capacities. But if you are someone who really is serious about actually this that we've spoken about today on this episode kind of makes sense as to where I'm at, Maze Accelerator is a great place for you. It's a great place for you to come when you're ambitious and saying, like, I want to consciously every day be working towards something that actually is going to get me to an endpoint that means something, rather than you working on yearly goals that actually don't really make that much difference as to whether or not you hit them. Because let's be honest, like, a revenue goal is a revenue goal, and that's great, and it's important in the sense of you need revenue to, sustain a business. But actually, there's loads of other goals that are much more meaningful for a lot of people, that require some attention, that require you to actively be moving towards them, rather than just chancing it and saying, well, we'll just see what happens. And Maze Accelerator is a beautiful place for you to be held, but also get out of your comfort zone and actually start working through all this stuff that you need to do to move forward. Maze Accelerator is currently open for enrollment. Cohort 4 is starting in January of 2024. There are limited spaces available for that. It is a small group. We meet 3 times a month on a call, which is really exciting. You get 15 minutes of one-on-one time with me in every call. So we all get on a call and it's like a hot seat and you get direct time. So this isn't like a learning experience. Yes, you will learn things, but this isn't how that works. This is an implementation piece. So you come and we have a discussion and you understand what are you going to do next, where you go next, what's the next to do, what's the next focus point. You then also get 4 days a week Slack access to me, which means I go in there once a day. It means that you send me any questions, any queries, any panics, any emergencies. You can send documents for review, you can send assets, copy, and I will review them. It's like having me on hand, like it's like having me in your pocket. Like it's really handy, it's amazing to get feedback on and to be able to then make changes straight away. There's other components to Maze Accelerator, but those are the two that are really meaningful in the sense of how are you actually gonna achieve your 5-year goals in 12 months. Yeah, Maze Accelerator is like a catalyst for growth. And the joy of Maze Accelerator is you go at the pace you want to go. So everybody's on a different journey in there. Everybody's on a different kind of set of success metrics, what success means to them, what they're working towards. You get to come in and decide the pace. So if you want to go like 100 miles an hour, I will meet you there and I will go with you at 100 miles an hour. If you come in there and actually, for whatever reason, you're like, I'm not doing that this year. I want a chilled approach. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to, look at things really holistically. Like, that's cool. You can do that as well. This space is flexible and it's movable to kind of suit you and for you to get the most out of it, depending on what you want to achieve. Go to www.madejames.com/mazeaccelerator. You can read more about it. You can put an application in. I will look forward so much to reading your application and write on your application that you listened to this episode or that you found it through the podcast. And I will just be overjoyed to approve your application. What happens is I read all the applications myself. I will then either accept it and you'll be sent a contract and invoice, or if I want to chat with you just to find out more, if we don't know each other and I'm like, oh, I need to know a little bit more details, or maybe you've wrote on your application that you'd like to speak to me, then we will have a call and we can chat for 10-15 minutes. And then at that point, we will then move forward and we'll send you out a contract and an invoice and you can get ready to rock and roll. And we kick off in January and you will spend 6 months with me. And it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. We've got a lot of people's words in terms of how they find Maze Accelerator and what it feels like and looks like. And every time we run it, we tweak it and improve it. And it's a constantly evolving thing in the sense of it's never sort of done and that's it. We just shelve it. Like it's always looking at tweaks and how do we move forward with it. So if you want to join a really exciting business advisory program that is really truly hands-on and is really focused on getting you to your goals and is bespoke to you, then consider joining Maze Accelerator and I hope to see you in there. It's a really lovely group of women. That is all I've got time for today. It's been a joy to speak with you. Come and say hello. Tell me that you're enjoying the podcast. Leave us a review. I will be back next week and we will talk more on this series that we've got going on about how do we have an amazing 2024? How do we kick the year off right? There's more great episodes to come. Speak soon. Bye.